Never, never, ever.
Yeah, well, even if I want to have to say very comforting. So, Antonio's teammates were not particularly forthcoming. Never been no ma'am so much of my life. They acted like the team's regimen was no big deal, just standard practice.
Yeah, been there and done that. They're circling the wagons. Team first. That's how competitive athletes think. Anything else is disloyal.
And you, Mr. Palmer, you dragged us into this. Have you any light to shed?
Actually, I did find something interesting. It was in the discovery packet the defense sent over. These are the wrestling team's rosters and body measurement stats for the last 4 years.
And why are we looking at these?
You see last year's? Now look at the rosters, then look at each kid's weight. Now, look at the year before that.
They look almost identical. What's your point?
Now go back one more year.
I'm sorry, they look virtually the same. You're losing each other.
Now look at their heights.
They're growing, but they're not changing their weight classes.
Bingo.
Coach Davis, you have had quite a run at Dartwell. 16 years as head coach, 4 years as an assistant at other schools.
I've been very blessed.
And I'm guessing in your 2 decades of working with young athletes, you have learned a thing or two about sports nutrition.
All part of the game.
So tell me, how is it possible that during some of your wrestlers' prime growth years, I'm talking between 14 and 18, they don't seem to gain any weight?
I'm sorry. I don't know what you mean.
I apologize. Let me get a little more specific. As it turns out, I was able to get my hands on the Dartwell wrestling team's varsity roster for the last 3 years. Now, Coach Davis, are you aware, according to your own rosters and weight records, from sophomore to senior year, on average, only 12% of the wrestlers on your team change their weight class?
Okay.
You don't find that odd?
No, I don't. A lot of it's genetics. But wrestlers, winning competitive high school wrestlers, just tend to be early developers. It's the right body type for wrestling. So their growth just isn't terribly dramatic. Because by and large, the bulk of it is happening before they start their work with the team.
Really? But then, how do you explain Lance Bryles grew 2 inches in 3 years and didn't gain any weight? Clearly, the bulk of his growth didn't happen before he joined the team.
Well, Lance. I mean, we're talking about an outlier there. That's not a typical situation.
I see. And what about Ryan Kisson? Grew 4 inches but didn't gain a pound. He an outlier too? What about Reese Nichols? Grew 5 inches and no weight gain. I mean, wrestler after wrestler, these stats don't lie. Although 80% of your wrestlers grew at least 3 inches during their time on your team, only 12% gained weight. Now, I don't know about you, but that seems pretty strange to me. Pretty scary, pretty dangerous.
Objection. Counselor's testifying.
Mr. Fuller? Oh, that's all right, Your Honor. I'm going to put a pin in that for now. Now, Coach Davis, your success with the team has started to wane in the last few years. You even failed to qualify for state in the last 3.
Very tough competition. Last 3 years have been challenging.
Actually, in all 3 of those years, you didn't have a wrestler that qualified in Antonio's weight class. Am I right? You had to forfeit the slot.
Yes.
Probably didn't make your bosses very happy. Were you aware that the school's administration had actually started reaching out to potential placement candidates for your position?
I've heard rumors. But that's the nature of athletics. You don't bring home the trophies. People start to look elsewhere.
It must have been very exciting when you were able to recruit Antonio. Great wrestler, perfect weight.
Had high hopes for Antonio. Really believed in the boy.
So how did you feel when he showed up an inch and a half taller and 8 pounds heavier than he was last May?
Well, obviously I was surprised. But 8 pounds is not an insurmountable goal for these kids.
Oh, I know. Look at all the athletes you've worked with in the past that have grown inches taller and have gained absolutely no weight. And now here we are. Let me ask you a question. If you found out that some of your athletes were doing things that compromise their health to keep their weight down, maybe even put their lives at risk, what would you do? To stop them, I guess.
Objection. The attorney is badgering the witness, making up hypotheticals.
You're right. Let's not be hypothetical. Let's get specific. What did you say or do for Lance Bryce, or Ryan Tisser, or Reese Nichols, or for that matter, Antonio Garcia, when you discovered that they were getting taller? Because let's be honest, you can't get taller and not gain any weight. Did you tell them to run behind the team's bus in a garbage bag?
What was the answer to the question?
I'm making the coach uncomfortable, and I don't want to do that. I withdraw the question. Nothing further.
Let's take a 10-minute recess and then continue with defensive cross-examination.
Any news on our friend Dr. Barnes?
Actually, Taylor is waiting outside in the hallway for you. She thinks she found something. I've looked through everything Dr. Barnes has ever written or said. Every medical journal article, every FDA drug testimonial, every speech, every seminar, everything. And believe it or not, I found nothing about heart murmurs.
How is that possible?
But when I looked through her corporate accounts, I noticed she almost always tries to time her vacations with European medical symposiums. And then it occurred to me, could it be that Dr. Barnes offers her opinions and expertise in languages other than in English and in countries other than the United States? Long story long, my 3 years of high school German paid off. Dr. Barnes was a speaker at a cardiology trauma convention in Munich 2 years ago. This is a transcript of her speech.
What did it say?
I'll spare you my terrible German. But basically, she says that mitral valve murmurs have never, I repeat, never been shown to increase the risk of myocardial infarctions regardless of other externalities.
So in the words of the good doctor, Antonio's heart murmur couldn't have caused his heart attack.
That's how I read it.
Speak of the devil and she will appear.
Jeez.
Sign it out. Nice work, Taylor. This is gonna be fun.
So, after examining the original medical reports, the toxicology results, and Antonio's personal medical records, what conclusions were you able to draw?
Well, the first thing to catch my attention was Antonio's mitral valve prolapse, his heart murmur.
Not a girl, Sandra. Come on in. The water's fine.
Well, you gotta watch out.
Your smell is shine.
So, in your expert opinion, you believe that Antonio's mitral valve murmur was the cause of his catastrophic heart event?
Actually, no.
No.
No? And why is that?
The more I looked at the medical reports, the more I felt as though something had been overlooked. And then I realized it was lactic acidosis.
Lactic acidosis. Could you explain to the jury what that is?
Certainly. When the body is under extreme physical exertion, as Antonio's was, and it can't get enough oxygen, it looks for alternate sources, alternate pathways to get its energy, anaerobic pathways. The byproduct of this process is lactic acid. Lactic acidosis is simply when this lactic acid enters the bloodstream.
And why is this important?
Because in certain cases, lactic acidosis can interfere with a standard toxicology test, like the one performed during the autopsy in this case. So I had some of the samples rerun at our private lab.
And what were those results?
Objection, Your Honor. This is the first we've heard of these tests.
I'm going to allow this, but I'll make sure you have ample time to conduct any confirmations that you need, Counselor. Overruled. And what did these new tests show?
They show that Antonio was using amphetamines at the time of his death.
Now, how big a factor would these amphetamines be in causing Antonio's heart attack?
Enormous. In my opinion, it's the amphetamines that killed him.
You want coffee, love?
I've got half a cup, but it went cold, so I didn't drink it.
You want coffee, love?
Antonio would not.
Nothing.